This is a part of a 3-part series. We had part 1, which is recorded, so you can go back and watch it if you missed it, on what it means to be an affirming church. And so our first part was a Bible study, which we had 2 weeks ago, I think it was, where we talked about queering the Bible. So if you want to know what does that mean, you can go back and look at that, and I have other materials about that as well, which I can share with you. But today we have our lovely panelists here, and so we are going to have a conversation today. We'll have part 3 on June 1st, where we're going to have Laura Choi, who's deeply involved in our Presbyterian, talk about the global church on gender and sexuality. So we look forward to that as well. But let's start with prayer, and this prayer comes from Reverend Lizzie, who is one of my favorite people. She is an Episcopalian priest in Texas. She goes by Father Lizzie or Reverend Lizzie, and she just came up with this book, God Didn't Make Us to Hate Us. So we're going to start. Some of you may have heard this before in one Bible study, so forgive me if you heard this prayer before, but let's pray, friends. Lover of souls, you have wrapped us in your infinite affection. From our unremembered infancy to the moments that weigh us down now, you have always loved us completely. What we feel like love is a scarcity to be measured, doled out in small sums to keep the lock on our hearts securely fastened. Unfurl our fingers in the way only you can, and remind us that your love is not counted in cups or days, but in the infinite, borderless expanse of all the rooms, in all the universe, and more. And when we feel like we have no love left to spare, draw us to collapse in your arms, kiss our foreheads, and remind us your love can bear all things, even when we cannot. Author of love who believes and hopes and endures, hold us now and evermore. Amen. Amanda, if you wouldn't mind just making sure it's still recorded.
Going.
Okay, good.
Still
I
gotcha.
still have PTSD from a few weeks ago. It didn't work. So, friends, we're going to be through various questions and conversations today with our panelists. We're going to be addressing this big question of how to be an affirming and welcoming church in terms of gender and sexuality. So to answer that question, we have these 3 wonderful people here to help us guide us through that. We will have some conversations together, followed by a time for questions and comments. But as we have our conversation, I want you to know this is a judgment-free zone. We are all on different parts of our journey in terms of what it means to be an affirming individual as well as an affirming church. And so there is no judgment if you have a question that you really want to ask but aren't sure, what that's going to feel like for everybody else to hear. So please be kind and mindful as you ask your questions. We have these 3 wonderful panelists. We have Anthony here, who is a part of our choir. He is also, I would say, a founding member of our young adult group as well, and on the leadership team for that. So I'm grateful to have you here. We have Emily, who we have like a list that is like at least 5 pages long of all the things that you do around here. Emily is a student minister. She is the co-chair of our outreach committee, teaches Sunday school, and it feels like we do just about everything here. So I'm so grateful to have you here. And we have Rich here, who is the chair of our adult ministries committee, also a student minister, and helped us in creating this conversation and panel today. So I'm grateful for the 3 of you to be here. And you all know me, so thank you for being here. Let's start here. I'm curious to know, for each of you, when has there been a time where you have felt seen or affirmed or loved? What was a space or even a person? It can be something really small or something really big where you felt seen in some way. And anybody can go first.
10 years ago, I came to this church. By the way, let us know if you can't hear us.
We will speak.
Okay,
loud.
we'll try to use our teacher voices.
Gym teacher.
Gym teacher voices, right? 10 years ago, I came to this church. I was leaving a place that I had been at in a very committed way for 25 years. I was coming in a little bit bruised and battered, and the welcome response that I got the first few times I came in the door made a difference. But I think I truly came to be seen, affirmed, and made to feel welcome as weeks passed and then months. And I started to get the impression when I walked in the door that people who greeted me by name, were honestly glad to see me walk in the door. I felt the same way in my workplace at Whippany Park High School, where I taught for many years. After a certain point in time, where I felt like I was stuck in, I was part of things there. So I would say that would kind of be the way that I would view that. And I go first to my reception here.
That's beautiful. I can't believe it. Yours seems like
Thank
Me
you.
too, and I've only been here 2.5 years, so.
I would say that the person who most affirmed me was my grandmother, my paternal grandmother. And I'm going to cry because she's my spiritual mother, right? No judgment, always loving, always welcoming, no matter what.
That's beautiful. Sometimes it takes just one
Yeah.
person to make you feel. Oh.
Apple box.
Bring it on over here.
I like your box.
We all
There you go.
I always carry tissues with me, and I got in the habit when I was a school teacher, and it would be the day on which I'd be handing back tests. Sometimes helps.
So I would say the very first time I came to this church, it was about 1.5 years ago, and I came to the first service, and I heard the choir, they were amazing. The sermon was amazing. I just really liked it. I'm having coffee.
Google still tracks you in incognito mode. Use DuckDuckGo, a real private browser.
Someone just unplug that.
Google wants to be involved. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, right. So I'm fellowshipping afterwards, having coffee, and one of the choir members comes up to me, Wayne, and just made me feel really nice and accepted. And Daniel came up, and it was nice. Wayne had quickly asked, do I sing? And I was like, oh, well, I used to sing in the choir, growing up, and like sometimes here and there. And he goes, oh, well, let me introduce you to the choir director. So that kind of like, and just explaining to him and everybody that I've met here about my life, and really makes me feel accepted and belonged, especially as a gay man. Yeah.
Thank you. So here we are, April 6th, 2025, in the midst of some conflict in a world which is ever changing. Why did you say yes to be on this panel today? Why is this an important question, or did I bribe you enough to have you here today? What made you say yes?
Well, I love the fact that I talk about this to a lot of my friends and other fellowships and things. This is really an all-inclusive church, and I love, as a gay man, it makes me feel happy because not that this is like, say, a gay church, because it's not a gay church. It's just a church, and it accepts everybody. So we can look past the sexual orientation or the genders and know that everyone is welcome. And lots of people, I feel like, especially in the gay community or LGBTQ community, don't know that they can walk into a church and be accepted and be able to accept communion. So yeah, the time now especially, I just feel like it's, I felt so loved here, and I spread the word to anybody, not just gay, straight, lesbian, queer, but anybody needs if they're seeking God in any way, they have a place here.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
I'm impressed about this church because this church is willing to take on hard questions and be in uncomfortable spaces. It's easy to go to church. I think most of the churches I belong to in my life, that I grew up in, very happy, not controversial, moving along. You would move through the liturgy, you'd move through your seasons, but without confronting things. And so this is a church that I'm really impressed about. And by the way, after Bible study, so my daughter is gay, and so after Bible study, the Praying Bible, she's like, oh, y'all got some really cool people in your church. Because I don't think she has experienced that. Even though she wasn't present, I told her all about it. And she's just never experienced that kind of church in her life.
That's amazing.
I think there are three things that caused me to be on this panel today. One of them is, like Emily, I'm an elder of the church. You elected me, you elected Emily to make decisions regarding who we would be and what we would be. And I'm involved, I was involved in a good conversation that we had back in February, just prior to the sermon that I think will go down in history as the February 23rd sermon of Daniel Vigilante. And I think a lot of what Daniel shared with us that day may have come about because of a very good and I think very deep conversation that we as elders had. The follow-up to that was that we established an LGBTQ plus task force in the first meeting of that task force. And Nancy D'Alessio's on that, Wendy's on that, Bruce Frazier's on that, Amanda's there, I'm there, and Daniel's there. One of the things that Wendy said was, we're taking some fairly public actions here with signage and things like that, but we really have to give people an opportunity to sit with some of this stuff and share some of this stuff. And so this whole panel kind of came out of that. And I think, I owe it to you to share with you why I'm where I am on these things. One of the reasons, the primary reason why I am where I am on these things is I am the father of a non-binary 32-year-old. Aaron just celebrated their birthday yesterday in their home in Brooklyn. And being Aaron's dad and trying to be the best dad that I can for Aaron causes me to think about the Aarons all over our country, most of whom I don't know, and to refract that through my understanding of what it is to be a Christian. And I guess the last piece is, I'm an American and a Christian, and I'm thinking a lot right now about what my obligations are, what my responsibilities are, given the intense turn that things have taken in the last couple months.
In light of that, how are you each feeling? It can just be one word or longer, but what are you feeling right now in light of the
Well, I'm feeling some fear for the safety and well-being of my own child, whom I love, just as you would if you were in this position. I'm also feeling some anger. I'm a taxpayer. Aaron's a taxpayer. And we do, I really believe most of us do believe in equal protection of the laws. And some hope. You never let go of that. Daniel talked about that this morning.
I feel a little worried because I fear that there's a pull trying to sort of pull us backwards in time. But more than that, I do feel safe. Being in my life and where I stand, I feel safe. I feel proud to be an American, and I do agree that hope is there, and I think
It's a little work these days, though,
a
isn't
little,
it?
yeah. Put some effort into it.
Yeah.
But it's all worth it, and I think, ultimately, though, I do feel safe.
I'm glad.
So some of you know that I'm a lawyer. I'm not one of the law firms that's rolled over, and I use that word very. So I worry because I work in a profession where very, very influential people have rolled over and have not used their privilege and their voice to guard what I took an oath to do when I became a lawyer. That's what I pledged to do when I got my license. So, I worry.
Absolutely. So we have this big question, which Rich mentioned. Our session has been thinking about. We have this amazing task force of people who are a part of this question of how can PCM be a welcoming, affirming church in terms of gender and sexuality. Why is this important for us to be asking, responding to? Why? And we'll get into what we can do better. But why is it important that we're asking this question?
I teach my children every Sunday, like even today.
Yeah.
God loves us. God loves every one of us. But that's not our world. But that's who I want us to be. So that's why it's important.
Now we're professing and we're confessing Christians. We're followers of Christ. Among other things, Jesus calmed storms, which means we have to be in the business of calming storms. Jesus nourished, which means we have to be in the business of nourishing. Jesus healed. Jesus enhanced life and brought new life, and I think we have to be in all those businesses. But Jesus also lined up with the folks that were having a rough time in that world at that time. Jesus tended to line up with underdogs, and Jesus tended to line up with the oppressed. And I think right now in this country, there are people who are being scapegoated. They're being scapegoated, frankly, by the most powerful men in the world, and people that work for them. I just think as Christians, we got to line up with the people that are being scapegoated. Lay aside my own personal skin in the game. I just think that's what prophetic Christianity involves. It's speaking truth to power, and it's offering a safe harbor for those who need a safe harbor. I think that's why our church has to be in the business of talking this through.
I think people need to know about these things. Had the privilege to go to France and sing the choir. I met a person there named Max. He actually was, when we came back, he was coming here for work. And he is a gay guy, and he knew Daniel and myself and some of the people from the choir. And so he came to church, and he was really brought to tears because he never in his life thought that he would be able to be welcomed in church. Never thought that a gay person can leave the church and be happily married and a home was brought to tears because he felt that God is now entering his life again. Because growing up he was there, but then he was shut off because he thought that because of his sexuality, God wants there's no place for God. So in his life, and I feel like, to me, no words can express, no amount of, like, nothing's bigger than if you can bring awareness to God to someone. Like that, I think, could change the world. You know, it's, so it was just moving and touching to know. And also, like, growing up in America, growing up in Presbyterian church, I was surprised to know that, like, really people did not think that, people still think that you can't go to church if you're gay. So it was hard to me to wrap my head around, but it was like so moving for him that it made me feel like, wow, people need to know.
And so we're doing why just saying this is for Max, you know, this is
Yes.
for all the Maxes
Yes.
who we know who didn't have this experience growing up.
It could change everything. I mean,
And some of us in this room have had the experience of being a parent in that setting, in one form or another, whether it be transgender, non-binary, lesbian, gay, bisexual. But most of us probably haven't. Although most of us probably have thought about what that would be like sometime. And we all know, we've all read about stories in which some person came out to their parents or their family and they cut them off. And I bet all of us have said, I don't know how I'd handle it, but I know I wouldn't handle it that way. And so, Emily handles it, I handle it, your folks probably handle it, in the way that you would all try to handle it. But I think, what does that mean for a church? It means if somebody from the LGBTQ community walks in the door some Sunday morning, do we turn our backs? Or do we open our arms? And I think we all know what we want to do in that setting. And I think that's another reason why this conversation today, this morning, thanks for coming out for it, but within our church as a whole, needs to happen. So we can all have some time to think through our response.
Might be jumping ahead, but what my daughter shared with me is that she looks at the communications from a church, looks at their statements on the website, looks to see what the signage says, to know if it's even a safe space to enter or not. So that here, yes, one would hope that, you know, we can, with our practice and our thinking, and we can welcome people, but we've also welcomed people just by our communications. So she's actually said she's not likely to go. And when I asked her about places where she's not been affirmed, so we sent our kids to Christian sports camp. Really, like from the time right after they finished second grade. My son went all the way through COVID when, you know, when everybody shut down. My daughter stopped a year before. And the reason was we talked about that, because we hadn't really talked about those reasons. But she said they were silent. And there was an undercurrent. So that was it, is that you didn't talk about being different. You didn't talk about things that were not affirmed. But if it came up, that's when it came, when the question came up, then they would say, oh, that's not what God wants. So that was her real problem, is that they were disingenuous. And so she doesn't feel safe in spaces. So she's gonna look at a place that communicates that first before walking into a space, especially church.
Absolutely. Because silence is, I would say, worse in many ways than outrightly saying, I don't agree with you, or I
exactly.
don't you, because you're holding it, and you're almost appearing like you're going to welcome, but then
You don't.
Yeah, a certain kind of silence, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're getting to what we're doing well. What else are we doing well as a church here at PCM in answering this question together?
Boy, it's lucky we have Amanda Tufts, because Amanda Tufts does great work on websites and signage and things like that. And let's say this, first day that the first of the signs that kind of stretched across, 2 post signs went up down at the parish house. It was quite moving to look at that sign. I don't know if any other congregation in Morristown has been that forward about that message. And when the next one up, about a week later, out here, there was something about that message especially that put a lump in my throat when I saw it. And the controversial part of those signs is the flag. It's not all over the place, but it's there. You can't miss it. And we don't want you to miss it. When I say we, I'm talking about as an elder. But for a moment, assume that the flag weren't there. The sentiments expressed in the words are the sentiments that we as Christians, whatever we believe about LGBTQ plus things, I mean, we would go to war for those as Christians. By putting that flag in there, I think we say, we know that these last few months have been especially difficult for you. We know that. And if you are a person who is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, queer, however you identify, or whatever your orientation, and if you're looking around for a place that will welcome you, and where your love for God will be encouraged, welcomed, and where you'll be part of a community that will care for you, come to us. You come to us. Because we'll take care of you. We'll put you on a committee real fast.
We've named some of the things that we're doing well, but what could we be doing better? A year from now, if we were doing something more, what could we be doing? What is this that we need to either be answering? What are the things that we need to be doing as a church to be better?
I'll go back and say, stop, don't be comfortable. Right? Don't rest and say, oh, we've got signs up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're welcoming. We've got all these new members coming in. It's to always be uncomfortable and always be seeking and always be growing.
And always be truly welcoming and truly affirming. My wife, who attends a nearby Lutheran church, was just part of a process to make them a reconciling Christ church. That's what the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America calls a congregation that publicly says all are welcome, and that absolutely includes gender and sexual orientation. And it's a process. You go through this kind of church evaluation process, and everybody starts off by saying, well, of course we're welcoming.
Yeah.
We're nice folks. Of course we're welcoming. And that's true. It's very true of us, isn't it? But that particular kind of welcome, about that, Anthony, you mentioned some friends that said, oh, a Christian church, they don't want me over there. We know there are plenty of churches like that. So we have to be maybe just a little bit more purposeful about that welcome. And probably that's the thing we have to work on. Now, PCUSA does have some version of that process, don't we? The covenant.
Something light.
there's more light,
Two
and
are.
there's covenant network.
Attorney
Yeah.
Craig Barth, our
Yeah.
expert on things.
Covenant Network of Presbyterians, and then More Like Presbyterians. A More Like Presbyterians is more a political activist group, whereas Covenant Network of Presbyterians is kind of across the board, national. If somebody's looking up for a safe Presbyterian church in Morristown or wherever, and we're registered as a Covenant Network church, they will know by virtue of that registry that we are a safe church.
So in other words, if we're a Covenant Network church, and somebody looking, this mythical person
Yes.
who is looking for a safe harbor, you know, they might be more drawn to come with us.
Exactly.
Because they know it would be a safe and affirming place.
Also, if I can just say, because this frustrated me for years, that our denomination was not open in the way it is now. And I'm very grateful that it has become so. But there are churches that were in our same denomination, in our same presbytery, who left when that happened. So those are not good churches. They will not welcome. And I mean, the church that my son and his family attended for many years until they moved somewhere else is like that. And so if a church makes kind of a point about why they're special, but that's not part of it, that's not a church to go to.
A good number of the families at our summer camp were at New Providence, and they went Echo, right? And so it was like, oh, my eyes were opened about like, oh, we've been going for years, like a decade, over a decade, right? To summer camp with these families, and it's like, okay, something different. And it was sad. It was a very sad rupture.
But there were years that General Assembly voted on that and voted against it. And so I am so grateful and thrilled that finally that went through. It should have done so long before. But just to say that.
When you mentioned New Providence, I think probably also Liberty Corner. And those are great old churches, but we are a great old church, and people do look to us for a moral example in this community and through Morris County. And you know, you look at all the little Presbyterian churches that are right now probably close to euthanasia. You know, I mean, it's really hard for them. And some of those believers are going to be looking for a place to be. I think, and with younger people too. We kind of have to put our money where our mouth is. Not just to put more people in the pews, because I'm not sure that's what the point is. To serve more people, to offer to them the gospel.
Wait, one more question for our panel, and then we're going to open it up to comments. So just one more question for our panel. We are obviously, as you're naming, a church, a group of people of wonderful diversity. We all come with different questions, different identities. But we want to know, how can we, as faithful people, how does your faith inform these questions around gender and sexuality? For you personally, what does your faith tell you about these questions, and that maybe we can be thinking about how our faith can inform these questions?
Matthew 11 says, "Come to me, all ye who are weary and heavy laden, and in fact, I will give your soul rest." Okay, so that's Jesus, and we're followers of Jesus. And I think it would be wonderful if the Presbyterian Church in Morristown, this historic and important church, would say, "Come to us, all who are weary and heavy laden, and we will give your soul rest." on this has everything to do with being a follower of Jesus.
I agree. I just think we would continue to not just talk the talk, but walk the walk, and have these conversations, and really be what we want to be, to let others know that this is Christ-like, and we are that no matter what. Yeah.
There's nothing in my background that would say radical, but my family, like generations of Presbyterians and whatever else is scattered through there. But what I would say is radical is where I am now. Radical love. Right? Just
What do you mean by radical love?
just open wide. Open wide, no boundaries. Which is hard, which is really, really hard. There are some people that are just not lovable. But we're called, right? And so it's testing. It's to remain uncomfortable.
I think we all worship a God of unconditional love. And it's pretty hard to exclude when you worship a God of unconditional love. I also think, a few weeks ago we were talking about Martin Luther King's eulogy to the girls who died in the 16th Street Baptist church bombing. And King talks to the people assembled that day of choosing courage over caution. I mean, this is not an easy conversation to have. Not everybody in this room thinks the way that I do, or Emily does, or Anthony does, or Audrey does, or the person next to them does. There's a risk involved in this. People who disagree may not be happy with that, and we always want to treat one another with as much love as we can. But we also do have to choose courage over caution, I think.
Well, thank you to our panelists for answering these questions. We're going to open it up to all of you. Remember the statement at the beginning that we are all on different spectrums of our journey of being affirming individuals in an affirming church, and so we will welcome any question that you have, but try to have it to further this conversation, and also consider answering the question that we're thinking about: how can PCN be a welcoming and affirming church? Yeah.
Yes, I just to say, I think this is extraordinary, this meeting today, that it's happening in a church or anywhere else for that matter. I think the three of you are extraordinary to be comfortable coming up here and expressing your convictions that more people need to hear. I don't think it's easy to come up and, some of us you don't know. And the other thing that I was struck by, a couple of things. One, Rich said about Jesus always being the lover of the oppressor, the marginalized, thank you, Brian, the team that's not favored to win the game. And I think that's one big plank in why what you're saying is so important. But the other thing that I was thinking about, I'll try to shorten it. Patty always gets nervous when I stand. But who do we love more in our lives than our children, right? I mean, is there anything we love more than our children? And everybody who's gay, lesbian, queer, whatever they are, transsexual, they're somebody's kid, right? And knowing how much love we have for our kids, what would we want more than just to have them have a level playing field? That's all we want. We don't want them to be persecuted. We don't want them to be shortchanged. We just want them to have a level playing field. And I think all of you articulated that so well. So I was very happy to be here. And I want to just take my hat off to all three of you, and you too, Richard.
Hi, I want to say before my question that asylum is not a legal concept, but if there were a time where the need for that would arise, what would we do? I just would like, as elders, I would like to put that to you. Because it's, you know, it's the gender and orientation discussion is one thing, but there's many other people that are marginalized and made targets, for the whole EEI thing that's happening. That Colin Powell no longer exists on the Defense Ministry's website, things like that. There's more to it. But, I think that it would be good to think ahead of what if things become worse.
And,
So, well, for people who couldn't hear what Monica's comment was, she was asking about church asylum. It's not necessarily a legal concept, but it's something that the session might, take up and consider being broader than a question, and something that is characterizing, broader than a question that we're addressing today about being an affirming church, but that there's a number of other basic rights and peoples, marginalized peoples maybe, who are unprotected.
at that February meeting that I alluded to earlier, no small amount of time was spent, especially as regards Jan's Closet, about that we saw as our most vulnerable place for ICE. An ICE officer who's got a monthly quota says, boy, I'm not gonna make my quota, but I know there are people lined up outside that church on South Street, so maybe I'll go there on a fishing expedition, see if I can grab somebody. And so we spent quite a bit of time talking about how we're gonna do that, and our staff really has spent quite a bit of time figuring out what happens if. It's not exactly the answer to the question of giving sanctuary, but it is reflective of the fact that the members of your session are living in the real world and thinking about these things.
So,
thanks for bringing it up.
And I would say that we haven't addressed that, but it's an ongoing conversation. I think we see all of this as an ongoing conversation, keeping our antenna up, being aware of who we are, what we need to be.
As a former immigration attorney, that is really a very key concern of mine. I'm constantly horrified by the rhetoric that is anti-immigrant. I can't even imagine how people can say things as horrible as what's been said lately.
Wendy, you were going to ask. Thank you, Monica, for that.
I'm looking at Rich alluded to this session meeting, and as one who has voice but no vote, I would like to say,
so people can hear you in the back. Yeah.
I would like to say that you should all be very proud of the people that you have on session. They are a formidable group. They take on the hard questions, and they each have, it's amazing how everybody has expertise in something, and I'm very proud to be part of it. One of the things that, we have a gay son, some of you know that, and he's always been welcomed here. I mean, there are people that know him by face, by name, and he's always felt comfortable here. Of course, that isn't why we came here. We came here because I had been to many churches and just felt like this was a very welcoming church. I guess, thought about, in the other church that we belong to, I often said that they welcome people through the door, but not at the table. And I think that is what we have. How do we make people feel welcome to really be invested in here? And part of it is letting them know that this is a safe place. And I think that's why the signage, and I'm always so happy to be on Instagram and see something posted. Not just your children, who are adorable, but that's a different thing, that's a different post. But, we're doing, this is important stuff. And as the climate gets worse, I don't care what your political belief is, somewhere it's gonna come up and bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
You know, and I think maybe until it touches your case, you say, oh, well, you know, I hope you'll get what you voted for.
I'm going to piggyback on that because when we worked at Pride, you know, and the people were surprised, right? Right?
Yeah.
Like people were surprised. Like, churches here. We were next to the Methodists from Mount Tabor, and so and some people ran from me, literally ran from me when I tried to give blessings. They're like, no, and I ran away. And then other people were just like, other people were like, yeah, you're here, and other people were just very quiet. And acknowledgement, like, wow, I didn't know Presbyterians were here. I can't spell that word. But look, the Methodists are there, and like, oh, and they're normal people, and they're here. And so it was very quiet, so a wide range of reactions to our presence at different Pride events in the county.
Craig's point that there are a couple of categories in the Presbyterian Church, USA. Covenant Network and Church of Life.
More.
So is PCM registered on either one of those sites, or should they be, or has that discussion taken place?
It is being.
Funny
Yeah. No, you go ahead.
Well, it's got to be on camera, so you take it.
We are in process, and so that is, yes, we will be on those. I believe, were we approved for, we're on?
Discussions are gonna start on which and why, and then we'll get to the how of that.
But Amanda has already gotten us on some wider kind of Christian websites, which I would say more people would be looking at. But we will also be on the official Presbyterian websites.
You know, at that session meeting in February, we started off by talking about whether the pride flag ought to be up right away, given what was happening. And an elder colleague said, you know, that's nice, but why don't we instead explore relationships with LGBTQ groups and do something more substantive? And I think we've been trying to go down both of those tracks at this point, and I imagine that that's not going to stop with that February meeting. I think a logical next place to go is to look hard at something like Covenant Network, but I'm not speaking for the whole session here, I'm just speaking for one elder. An elder whose term is up. And I use the term
And he
term
keeps
rather
reminding me.
I use the term rather than sentence, which I use.
As a definition person, you're an elder forever.
We can take maybe one or two more questions before I ask our panelists one more question before we close in prayer. Yeah, right.
I gotta get my 2 cents in, you know. My name is Ray Deutsch. I've been a member of this church since 2014, I think. When?
Yes. Yes, Jim.
We have a gay son, as my wife mentioned. I was not happy. He's our only child. And I thought he would carry on the family name. But he's not going to have children. So he's not going to be able to do that. But I love him dearly. I wasn't crazy about the beginning, but we went through all of the things that we
went to P-flag meetings, we had counseling.
did, different meetings, and I learned to love my son, and it's the best thing that I've ever done in my life, except marrying my wife.
So
Oh,
much
you're gonna get a
for-
good dinner tonight.
Can't beat that.
One more.
Okay, and I think we're all in agreement and all in accord to to be a welcoming church when somebody enters our door. What I would like to see, and put the question either to the session or to the task force or both, is how can we be proactive, safe sanctuary? I've spoken to two out gay men who mistakenly thought that, and again, mistakenly, that PCM, you have to buy into Presbyterian theology in order to be welcomed at PCM. And of course, that's not the case, but I think we might have a little bit of a public relations challenge in that our unconditional welcome should be seen as a paramount value of ours, rather than, again, there's a mistaken that one is conditional upon the other. And I think we would all agree that, you don't have to memorize all the confessions of the church in order to be welcomed here.
Since none of us have.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right, or it doesn't go forward. But I think we have a little bit of a public relations challenge to be known as a safe sanctuary, whether it be for LGBTQIA+, whether it be for immigrants, whether it even be of people who are of a different racial. To be known as somebody who helps all the oppressed, I think is our challenge for today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it not be preconditional upon whether you buy our theology or not.
I think that's where word of mouth and being, there's about 50 of us here in the room, collectively being allies or part of the queer community, we are the ones who are going to get that message out through our own practices, through our own words, through our own sharing. As I think Daniel has said, I'm sure in a sermon at some point, it's the invitation which gets somebody in the door. And so it goes the same with this message, this all-inclusive message that we hope to share. Yeah.
Do we have a welcoming committee now?
Yes. Oh yes. Oh
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
They have T-shirts and badges too.
I know. I love the badges.
I know,
Very official.
I was on the welcoming committee with Dave Smazek when he was here.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I so enjoyed welcoming people and learning to like them. It just brought me joy to be able to meet people first time.
Yep. The person sitting next to you in the mask welcomed me to PCUSA, or to PCM first time I came here. Kathy Hare.
Of course.
Always a great welcomer.
Yes.
Still is.
Nancy, last one, and then our panel will have the last word. Yeah.
Mine's quick. I know Pride Month is June, but I want to know what we're doing because I need to get it on the calendar.
Okay, good. I'll talk to you after.
Oh, we don't know yet?
Oh, we know.
We know.
So,
Yeah.
So we are already registered to be at CCM.
Nancy was asking what we're doing for Pride Month because she needs to get it on her calendar.
Yes.
Yes, and
Yes.
the staff is like, yes, we have it.
Yes.
Nancy's like, I still want a date.
June 1st will be our big day, and then we have multiple places where we have prom coming up, which Second Chance Prom, which you'll hear more about as well. And we have multiple events where we're going to be represented. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's June 28th. I just don't want to say it too loud until I confirm.
Yeah. Thank you all for your comments and questions, and I'd love to have you all have the last word. How can we be an affirming conversation here at PCM? It can be one word or it can be a whole sentence, whatever, however you choose to answer.
Maybe the answer lies in Daniel's sermon today, where he asked us, do we have enough? And I think the question is, do we have enough love in us to welcome everybody? I think we do. I think we always have, but I think, I know we do now. That's how we can be an ever more affirming, welcoming church.
I just like I think we should continue to be not somebody who just invites them through the doors, but have a seat at the table. I heard I don't know exactly where it was from, but it was like on a table and it said, has everyone been fed?
Oh, that was North Daniel's sermon.
That
Yeah,
was really North Carolina church.
Yeah.
Have all been fed.
Yeah.
And have all been fed.
Yeah.
Like not just come here and have a seat, eat.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think just that, and like continuing to have these conversations and to not just talk the talk, but walk the walk.
I think across the spectrum, for vulnerable people, it's to be the hands, eyes of Christ, the hands, eyes, and feet of Christ in the world. That we will continue to carry that out. This church has always done that, to keep remembering that we're supposed to do that, and actually do it.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you to all of you for being present. This is, I think, one of our most well-attended adult education events that I've witnessed here at PCM, so I'm so glad that you all were here. If you could sign in before you leave, that'd be fabulous, just so we have a count. And join us at our various next programs. We have a bunch of different Jones theology, but the next one in this series will be June 1st at the same time in this space, where we'll have Laura Troy leading us in conversation. So let's end with prayer. Let's pray. Our souls magnify our God, and our spirits rejoice in the dazzling darkness wherein you move. Surely all is not for us to understand, but all is held in the palm of your hand. Like you, there is no one, wanting a world where there was none, incarnating creation within a warrior woman's fragile body. Help us believe when you say, behold, I am doing something new. Bridle our teeth with courage to say, us too. In the name of the God who brings down the powerful, lifts up the lowly, and remembers her promises forever. Amen. Thank you all. Thank you.